What is going on, people? It's Matt from Liquid Loans, and in this video I'm joined by some senior members of the Liquid Loans team, including Cristian, our CEO, and we discuss some topics that have been popping up in the community as of late. So, with no further ado, let's go. So I'm here with the team, and there's been a few questions popping up on different platforms, on Telegram and Twitter. So I thought we'd all jump on a video and answer some of these for the community. So welcome, gents. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks a lot.
No problem. So the first one that I've seen bouncing around is about audits. And can you confirm that there will be an audit on the Liquid Loans code and when?
Yeah, absolutely. So this code is immutable. It can't be changed. Once it's deployed to the chain, no more changes can be made to it after that. So a core requirement of being able to do that is you have to make sure that it's going to be solid for years and years and years to come. This code resides on many other blockchains, and it's bog standard and audited out the yin yang. And what we've done is we've taken it, we put it on testnet, and there's a number of things that have to happen. There are some small changes that need to occur, some other things that need to be in place, but we have to, so we can sleep well at night, and so our community can be safe. We have to run it through a final audit before we deploy it to the mainnet.
That's important, isn't it? Even if you change one thing, it's probably good diligence to get it checked anyway, just by third party, have someone else look over it. So that's our full intention.
I think don't forget, guys, that this is, once we launch this protocol, we can't change it, right? So we absolutely have to make sure that it's rock solid.
Yep. Another one that keeps popping up is, can you share the reason why the code is not publicly available on the testnet?
Yeah, so the code is on testnet, and you're correct, it's not publicly available. I have done a video on my other alternate channel as well, where I've been doing the Liquid Loans behind the scenes stuff, and there you can see me actually interacting with the front end, and you can see me putting in setting up vaults and putting in deposits in the stability pool and things like that. But it is not, we haven't made that public, and there's a few reasons for that. I mean, we're still waiting on PulseX to launch, and it would be great to see. This is my hope. I hope we see version 3 of testnet come along very, very soon. What I'd love to see on version 3 is PulseX up and running on there. Yeah. The next best thing would be to see our balances on there, to see all Pulse balances on there. That would be fantastic. And when you've got an environment like that, then we can start making price calls to PulseX, and that's when we'll be able to release this so that everyone can jump on and they'll be able to actually use their balances on the network, hopefully.
Yeah, so we actually had, this is some good points, Jexxa, but we had some core debates. I remember Cristian, Dave, myself, you. Should we put this in the hands of the community now? Should we wait? Should we put it in the hands of the community now or wait? And, you know, the reality is, without testnet v3 here yet, without a PulseX for price feeds, the DApp is wonderful, right? But the prices on there, they don't make any sense. The liquidation points, how much you put in versus how much you can mint, because PulseX doesn't exist. It's just a weird numbers experience on there.
Yeah, we're still using the ETH numbers really on there. So one Pulse is more or less worth what an ETH was worth. So and that's why you're seeing in my video. You can use it all and it works, but the numbers are a little bit bunky.
And the reality is, it just doesn't make sense at this point in time, and that will become available in the future.
Yep, gotcha. Another one that's been bouncing around Twitter is asking about the sacrifice phase, and why did we decide to run the sacrifice phase now at this time?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Matt. I think the answer to that is partly that we had planned to go in January. I mean, we were hoping that Pulse was going to be launching sort of around the March timeframe. We were planning that we would go in January, but obviously we weren't expecting a launch of a sacrifice phase for PulseX, and as a consequence of that, we decided to delay it by a month.
And also about the sacrifice phase, how come only stable coins were accepted?
Well, stable coins are essential, you know, to this protocol. It is a stable coin platform because it's better than other stable coins. Listen, there's stable coins out there that are not backed by anything at all. I don't even know why they call them stable. They're not. They just inflate and deflate and go through a bunch of weird mechanisms. and they can't hold a peg very well. But then you have the centrally backed stuff, that's controlled by the banks, and there's counterparty risk. They're certainly not immutable. They can turn them off at any time. There's fractional reserves, so that they're not even fully backed by anything at all. There's a lot of risk that comes with that. You only need to look at the world events lately to realize that stuff that comes with counterparty risk puts you at risk when you use those things. So the whole premise of Sacrifice is we hope that there's a better way. We know that there is a better way out there. We want that better way to exist on the PulseChain. So we're going to get rid of our counterparty risk stable coins in the hopes that a better one will evolve. Right? This isn't a system that has anything at all to do with other coins. Chainlink, Hex, a dog coin, an NFT. No, this is a better way to run a stablecoin system where the community owns it, everything's fully backed and redeemable, and there's no counterparty.
Yeah,
that's why.
Right.
Yeah. I was just going to pick up on that. Yeah, the community owned aspect of this, that's the clincher in all of this. It's great that it's a stable coin, but it's the fact that the protocol's owned by the community. That's what I think is really, really important. You're getting rid of that third party and that counterparty risk. We truly believe we want to see a better stable coin emerge on PulseChain.
And that is the narrative, right? So ultimately, that's exactly what we're hoping for, is that we're going to be producing something that's a lot better outcome than using centralized stablecoins.
For sure.
There's also been some comparisons about the protocol. Why do we feel liquid loans will perform well? Yeah,
now I've seen this bouncing around a few times, and I guess it's pretty easy for people to look across at similar code on different chains and try and make comparisons, just more or less to see what they think is going to happen. And that's fine. You should be doing that. But what you've got to understand is you can't look at that in isolation. You've got to look at if anything was changed on those protocols, what environment they launched in. And I guess I've got the benefit where I've gone and I've had a look across all of those portfolios. I've had a look at how they've structured some of the things, and some of them aren't ideal. I'll give you a couple of examples. There's one on Avalanche Chain, which has a rather large endowment fund. Now, what's endowment fund code for? Well, that's how they're going to fund things on the protocol. So what that means is it creates a bunch of sell pressure on that particular token. Right. So you got to understand some of the little tweaks that have been made on some of these. Another one on the Matic network doesn't have a big endowment, which is cool. That's great. But they've done some weird things where every time you move a coin, there's a 1% transaction fee. Who the hell wants to own something where every time you move it, there's a 1% fee? Like, that's just inserting a fee for God knows. I don't even know where the fee goes to be honest. I didn't go that far, but you got this 1% fee that is getting inserted into the protocol, which is just madness. Now, outside of all of that, both of those systems I've just referred to then, they've got less than 50 open vaults on them. So less than 50 users actually using that protocol. One of them has just recently had a spike, had about eight vaults open on it, and has just recently spiked up to 32 vaults. And you've seen the price of the token jump up along with that. But still, it's got that bigger endowment issue. So let's have a look at maybe something that's running on the ETH chain, which is the primary code that we're forking. Now, that, unfortunately, that was more of a victim of time. So when it launched, it launched right at the peak of the market. So Ethereum was at its top price. And it's actually mirrored, like when you look at the charts, it's mirrored the growth of, or the ups and downs of, the Ethereum price. So it's had to wear those battle scars. It was out of step a little bit just at launch, but as soon as it sort of settled down, then you can see it's mirroring the collateral protocol that it's tied to. What do we think PulseChain's going to do? Well, we hope that PulseChain, by its design, is going to go up and to the right. Is that way, is it? Up and to the right? So yeah, so if you pair this with an asset that is likely to do that, that has a direct and an indirect impact on the protocol, because it just means more more value can be extracted in terms of loans, which means more USDL can be minted, so more stablecoin can be minted, and that generates more fees. Now, the interesting thing on that one, even though the price has followed ETH's trajectory, the growth in volts peaked at about 1,300 volts, and then as the price of ETH's trailed off, it's dropped down to just less than 1,000 volts. So obviously people are, in times when the market's going to a bear market, they're not using all the protocols that are on the ETH chain as much. But the growth in holders of the stablecoin and the secondary token on that protocol is actually trending up. So even though the price of ETH has gone down, that is on still a slight trend up. So that's a good thing. It still means there is more people holding the token and it's getting more distributed. So that's a good thing. And I think people will get a nice surprise when we see markets in general turn around. So when ETH, in particular when ETH turns around.
Yeah, Jexxa, there's another thing here that I think people are losing sight of, and that is particularly with the originating code, right? So they're playing in a saturated market, right? So by comparison, I think there's something like, at least the ones that I was aware of, about 23 different protocols that they compete with on Ethereum. And not only that, but they're also retarded by significant gas fees. So the opportunity to really maximize the return from that particular protocol is quite challenging. But then you compare that with us. We will be one of the first, if not the first outside of Hex, that actually launches on PulseChain. So I think we've got a first mover advantage. I also feel that we do absolutely feel that PulseChain will appreciate in price. All of that bodes well for liquid loans.
Yep, definitely.
Another one that's been popping up is around USDL, and some are arguing that it's not a real stable coin. What do you have to say about that?
I'd actually argue that the stable coins you're most familiar with are not even stable themselves. So you have fiat itself that just gets printed and printed and printed. The purchasing power of the dollar goes down and down and down every year. You've got stable coins that are backed by those things, but they're fractionally reserved. So there's way more of those minted into the markets than actual fiat backing them. Yeah. So what keeps them stable? Well, all prices are because of what the ratios are in the pools, but it's just a completely broken system. Like the centrally backed stablecoins are literally very, very risky because of what I just described. And then there's a number of stablecoins that have just some weird stuff that tries to keep it pegged. It either just inflates or deflates through these mechanisms, and they end up not working very well. So when they do
plenty of rebate ones like that, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Now there's a number of them that work okay or work well, right? You've got DAI. It's okay. It has collateral, and then people mint themselves some DAI, right? You put in some ETH, you mint yourself some DAI. It's always redeemable back for some ETH. Now, unfortunately, it's also redeemable. They also put some of the fiat-backed stablecoins inside of there, which is just silly, right? Imagine putting in a fiat-backed stablecoin so you can mint yourself a different kind of stablecoin. Like, it doesn't make much sense at all, but that's how they wanted to do that. And what Liquidity did with LUSD is they looked at all these challenges and they said, listen, there's a much better way that's completely trustless. It doesn't need to be backed by $1, but it needs to be redeemable for $1 worth of something. $1 worth of Pulse in our case.
Sorry, Cristian, I thought you were going to go there. No.
I was going to ask the question because I think this has come up a few times, and it's how do we go from USDL to fiat? Because I think people seem to have this misconception that somehow the stablecoin is not possible to actually transfer to fiat, so, which is it's an absolute nonsense.
Right.
How do we get from any crypto to fiat?
Yeah, how do you get to any crypto? So you simply swap it. You go to the DEX and you say, I want to swap it for some Pulse. And then you could take that Pulse through a bridge, go to a different chain with it, or maybe you swapped it for some link and you sent the link to Coinbase. You swap. Everybody's got to swap, right? This is nothing new in crypto. But you can also directly redeem it for $1 worth of Pulse. Now, unless we think PulseChain is going to be a complete walled garden, That would be unfortunate. Yes, you will be able to get your USDL out. And make no mistake, we will be working for some fiat off-ramps for the PulseChain as soon as we possibly can get them, right? Because the whole goal is mass adoption into the chain, and then an easy way for people to be able to extract the value from their USDL if they choose to.
That's right.
I think, like, for me, I'd like to try and look years ahead, so 5-10 years ahead. And I think we all, if you're in the crypto space, look, yeah, mad gains are awesome, but with everything that's happened in Canada and everything recently, we've seen governments cracking down and locking people's accounts, their traditional bank accounts. We all hope for a better world where we can use these decentralized technologies to actually go down and pay for your loaf of bread or buy your fuel. Now, what that means is we need more wallets in more people's hands. We need merchants with wallets in their hands. And look, we think that's coming. So this is what we're doing here is we're building all that infrastructure that it will facilitate that. A merchant doesn't want to accept a Pulse or ETH or whatever where the price is going like this. They need something that they can accept that is stable for them, because they need to know that they've locked in their revenue. They can't have their revenue changing after they've made a sale. So stable coins are very important. They're going to be used for commerce a lot. We just need more of those endpoints at the merchants and the peer-to-peer stuff, obviously, as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another one that's been bouncing around, and I think a few of you have answered this already quite a few times, but obviously some more people need to hear it. How will Liquid Loans pull price feeds?
Yeah, so obviously the system needs to know how much $1 worth of Pulse is. So how much Pulse is worth, so we can then tie that back to a stable coin, which is worth $1 worth of Pulse. So you need to be able to have that price feed so you know what the price of Pulse is. Liquid Loans as a protocol will be relying on more than one price feed. We would like to make use of PulseX. That would be, if that's going to be one of the premier places to exchange things on the chain, it would make sense to partner with PulseX and use that for price feeds. But you don't want to just rely on one price feed. So the system allows for multiple price feeds to be brought in, and the code can actually look at, say, you might have a primary, secondary, and a tertiary price feed, and then it's pulling that primary price feed. And if for some reason the system looks at it and says, look, that price you've got, it seems like there's too much of a deviation. Okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to recheck the price, and if it's still that big deviation, okay, well, maybe I need to go have a look at the secondary price feeds and see, okay, no, there is a discrepancy there. That primary price feed's obviously got some sort of issue going on. Now, we also rely on like time-weighted averages and things like that. So concerns of like wicks down and things like that are not an issue. And things like flash bots and stuff like that. And Jesse does a really good example of how the type of energy it would require to try and suppress the price of Pulse and manipulate the price of Pulse for any one time is going to be immense, because Pulse is going to be paired in numerous pools across DEXs, hopefully on some on-ramp exchanges and things like that. So there's all these different places where the price will be coming from. So for someone to go and try and tank the price in on one particular exchange or system, the arbitrage event sort of takes care of that. Yeah. So the market does help a lot with things like that as well.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things, this ties back to the whole where are we at with the code question, because the reality is we are waiting for these things, and this is perhaps one of the last things that we need to resolve before we go to launch of Liquid Loans. Is we need to ensure that the price feeds are working properly. That we actually, whilst, and I know that, you know, Richard's made some comments around not needing to have an audit on PulseX, and I understand the motivation behind that. But the reality is that we need to ensure ourselves that the code is working correctly.
Yeah, definitely.
Particularly if we're going to be relying on price feeds from PulseX, and but there will be other sources, right? So I think from our point of view, that's the last hurdle for us.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Also, touching on front ends, will there be any other front ends?
Yeah, absolutely. So not only is the code completely decentralized, right? But it's almost a trick when you hear some protocols on ETH, they say they're decentralized, but there's what's called a centrally hosted interface. So it's the website that you actually have to visit and then connect your wallet into, and it's the only website available, and they don't release, nobody else is running a front end. So if you want a fully decentralized protocol, not only the backend code has to be decentralized and unchangeable and whatnot, but you need multiple front ends. So this protocol is designed for anybody to be able to run a front end. An SDK package will be made available to make that easy for people, for developers to build a front end. And there's some benefits that they can get from doing that as well.
A couple of points, a couple of things to point out here is that whilst this is early days, we're actually having conversations of some very reputable front-end providers now, some of which have already provided front ends on the Liquidity project, for example. So we are in conversations with these guys. And ultimately, one of the elements of a front end is the notion of a kickback rate. Now, bear in mind here that the front end that will be available through Liquid Loans will not have any kickback rate. So the kickback rate effectively is 100%. So there's no fee associated with using the front end for Liquid Loans. Other providers may decide to charge a portion of fees for that, but by doing so, they probably are going to be adding a lot of extra features that and that's just the commercial decision that they will make. But ultimately, other providers will come in with their front ends.
So people will they'll go to a front end where they're getting a better rate, or they'll go to a front end that may be charging a rate but gives a better user interface or has extra features that they've added. Because I mean, there's the base protocol. Anyone can build anything they like on it as long as they're using the public function calls. They can wrap any clever things they want on the front end to provide extra services.
Awesome. Well, guys, can I just say thank you so much for your transparency. You're always willing to pop up on videos, Twitter Spaces, streams, and shed some light on the protocol. So it really is appreciated. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming. Thanks a lot.
And for anyone watching at home, guys, you can always head over to liquidloans.io. Lots of information on there, or jump into our Telegram, t.me/liquidloans. And one of our superstar mods or admins are there answering your questions 24/7. So I hope you enjoyed that video with the Liquid Loans team. If you're not a subscriber yet to the channel, do hit that subscribe button and that bell icon so you're notified every time we drop new videos and content on the channel. You can also tap the like button, share the video with someone who you think it may benefit, and also drop a little comment below for the algo. It does help us out. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one.